such a variety of countryside. I mean, we have everything there.
Hi, and welcome to Camino Talks. This week, we are joined by John Brierley again, the writer of the famous Camino Guide series of guidebooks. Hello, John.
Hello.
John, so this week we are talking about nature, and we're thinking that because it's summer, flowers blooming and so on, the relationship between nature and modern pilgrimage. So we just wanted to ask you what that brings to you, what does it say to you, the thing about nature and pilgrimages.
Well, I think that, with regard to the actual Camino routes themselves, in the books I write from the very beginning, 20 years ago, I mark the percentage of the route that is a natural pathway, and the percentage that is sort of alongside a main road or quiet country, side roads and secondary roads. And it's interesting over the years how it has changed somewhat, partly because health and safety, more of the lovely earth tracks are being paved over, which is why I always offer, and all the guidebooks, alternative routes. Most of my time is spent out researching out how to minimize asphalt and how to keep people on a natural pathway, because it's so much more relaxing for the body to walk on a soft path rather than a hard surface. So in every stage particularly where there's more asphalt been put down or more paving slabs incidentally are very hard to walk on, especially the ones they have there in Spain. They love working with granite blocks and so on, and they're very unforgiving on the body. Whereas when we walk on the natural tierra firma, there's a sort of, when your foot hits the ground, it slides slightly. So it's much softer, there's much less impact. So in any of those places where the natural pathways have been eroded or paved over, I've always been able to find and research out more natural pathways by going the alternative routes. Most of those alternative routes, and particularly the ones I've researched out, are alongside rivers. Nearly every river has a riverside walk. And the advantage of taking a riverside walk, especially into cities, and nearly all cities are built have a river running through them, is that you don't need official waymarks. You follow the river. And it's very easy to say, you go to the river, you cross it, and you keep the river on your right or the river on your left, whichever way it is. So I've always been able to find alternative paths that are very easy to describe where people won't get lost. Because of course we all get used to the yellow arrow. We want the yellow arrow. So I think that it's, I think in general, I would say that there has been a marginal decrease in the natural environment landscape that we walk through, with building, with roads and so on. It is relatively marginal. And as I say, there are the alternative routes where we can dramatically increase the amount of time that we spend in nature and on natural pathways.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to understand that the Camino is to go as quickly as possible to Santiago, and therefore over time roads have been built next to trails or vice versa, and that obviously on the Camino we are passing by smaller towns and bigger towns, so there are natural connections, road connections between these. How the natural encounter on the Camino, what do you think would be the proportion of unspoiled nature compared to more farmland, which I think it's maybe a bit more the majority of?
Well, I would say that roughly it's probably a 60-40% split between an actual earth path and a roadway. When it comes to nature, the natural landscape, because most of the roads that we walk through are very much secondary roads. We see very little traffic on them, and there's usually trees and very much a sort of a country influence. So I would say the vast bulk, at least 90% of the Caminos, whichever ones they are, most of your clients, I imagine we're talking about the Camino Frances, but the vast bulk of that is through what we would call natural landscape. You know, you're seeing it, you're looking out over countryside, fields, cows, horses, sheep, and then agricultural land, of course, as we know, on the Meseta, that's mostly poor grasses or sort of poor grains, very little livestock because there's no grass up there. So I mean, one of the great advantages of the Camino is it goes through such a variety of countryside. I mean, we have everything there. We have mountainous regions, we have small little mountain villages, we have open Meseta, we've got the grape harvest and the vineyards. We've got this wonderful variety. You know, I've never been able to understand anybody who said they ever got bored on the Caminos, any of the Caminos, because now you don't have the Camino Frances, you don't get the coast, which you do, of course, in Portuguese and so on. You get, you know, the Rias and the Camino Inglés and so on. But there's always this tremendous variety. And I would say the overwhelming amount of experience that people have in walking any of the Caminos is that you're essentially walking through nature and you're walking through countryside. I think that's, you know, every few stages you come across a large town or a city, but we're in those for a very short space of time. And even when we're traveling through a city, we're usually through a city, if we're not staying there, in a couple of hours, we'll bring you from the, you know, one suburb on the entrance to the suburbs on the outside. So the overwhelming amount of the experience is nature, in natural landscape.
And I think, how would you weigh the natural value of the various routes of the Camino with, let's say, national parks that people may have discovered at weekends and so on?
Yes, well, it's an interesting one because my sense is that what is extraordinary about the Caminos, all the Caminos, is that 99% of all the walking traffic is in one direction. And because of that, it's amazing, even when we know that there are tens of thousands of pilgrims on the route throughout the year, we're really not seeing them because we're all walking in a sequence together. So, you know, in a park, national parks, you get people going in both directions. So you're always, in my experience, we're always more aware of people in other routes because people are going in both directions. That's one of the unique things about the Caminos. It's a one-directional route. And because of that, we're really not seeing as many people because we don't pass them. They're ahead of us or they're behind us. So there's always a sense of much less people than you would experience. Technically, there's in terms of volume, there's the same amount, but we're not seeing them.
Yeah, everybody stays on their own train wagon, I suppose, and stick to it to a point. That's great. And so maybe one thing, would you say that the fact that it is next to roads, secondary roads, and so on, I think it's also part of the success of the Camino in the sense that it allows people who are less adventurous to follow these natural paths, never too far from a road or a town or a village, as opposed to when you are in a national park or in a more mountainous area where obviously you're getting away from civilization in a way.
Well, I think that there's hardly any stage that we walk along any of the Caminos where we're not actually completely out of traffic, airshot and away from roads. So we do get, you know, while we're alongside roads or in some cases on small secondary roads for a fair amount of the time, I think the experience is that we're away from all roads quite a lot of the time, but because especially of the Camino Frances, there's so many people walking it, and having just said that, we're walking the same direction, so we're not seeing everybody. We're conscious that there's people behind us and there's people in front of us. So I've never really experienced anybody who had a sense of, nervousness. I mean, of course it happens, but it's very seldom that people really feel nervous on the Camino. Again, the difference between the Camino and an ordinary hiking trail is that because of its, if you like, its overtly spiritual nature, people are looking out for each other. Even if we don't know them, everybody's got a sense of, oh gosh, did you see, Mary back there? Do you think she was? Oh, was that the girl in the blue? Yes. Oh no, she was fine. I spoke to her. She said she just wanted some quiet. So everybody's sort of very quietly, not oppressively, but very quietly looking out for each other. And I think that gives people a lot of confidence when they're walking through. Now, a lot of women in particular write to me about walking some of the more remote routes and how, safe is it and so on. My usual response is that, the Caminos are probably one of the safest walking routes. That you're probably safer walking a Camino than you are walking the roads around your own house at home, wherever that might be. But having said that, I always say that if you're walking on your own and you're uncomfortable, man or woman, whoever you are, and you feel uncomfortable, stop and wait for somebody to catch up with you and say, look, do you mind if I walk with you? And I've never heard of anybody who said, well, no. Of course, they'll say, well, I'd be delighted to walk with you through this next stage or whatever. So we're always able to find in those cases where we might, for whatever reason, have a sense of nervousness, find somebody to accompany us. That's part of what pilgrimage is about, let's face it.
Yeah, very good. Last question on nature before we move on to a couple of people's questions from Facebook. What would be a great memory you had with fauna or flora on the Camino? If there is an image, a picture, a moment you can share with us?
What, in nature?
Yeah, on the Camino, something that...
I remember once going up onto the Meseta. I've always loved the Meseta. I remember, many years ago, it must be a quarter of a century ago now, one of my early Caminos. And it was a beautiful moonlit night, full moon. And I decided to walk on through the night because I could see through the Meseta, because it's got that lovely sort of soft white sand surface. In the moonlight at nighttime, it can be very obvious, very easy to see your way through the fields. And I remember deciding to walk through the night, which was absolutely wonderful. And shortly after I went up into the Meseta, I suddenly came across a herd of deer. It was the most beautiful experience because, especially walking at night, not many people do. You very seldom meet anybody else out, but on a moonlit night like that, everything is very still. There's no noise. Everything's very quiet. And of course, the lovely thing about walking through nature, whether it's at nighttime or, which would be very unusual, or during the daytime, walking is a relatively quiet activity if we're not talking. And it's very easy to come across, come upon wildlife in that way, because there's not expecting to find anybody out there. And it was just a wonderful experience. The moonlight, the path, the Meseta, and suddenly these, 10 heads popping up from the grazing and looking at me. I was very close to them. And that was a very memorable moment, a very beautiful moment.
A very exclusive moment. That's a great
It was an exclusive moment, yes, indeed.
That's great. Thanks, John, for that. I have 3 questions for you. We have Maria Elena Rodriguez asking, hello, considering your experience in the Camino, why do you think makes different? What makes the Camino different to other trips or vacation?
Oh, you mean how does it differ from another hiking trail or something, hiking holiday?
Well, holiday. Yeah.
Holiday. Oh, well, I mean, I think that, we've already covered some of it just now in this discussion. Because the Camino is an overtly pilgrimage route, it's overtly a spiritual traveling route. So people going on it are often walking with a, if you like, a high intentionality, a high purpose. They're looking for something, and everybody has that sense of a, if you like, to call it the sacred or something, or more of a special life-enhancing search. People, and that commonality then comes in, and you get this incredible sense of, which nearly everybody talks about. Even the greatest skeptic who sets out on these trips nearly always says one of the unique experiences was this sense of commonality, brotherhood, sisterhood, the sense of the Camino family. And that is unique, I think, to the Camino. You wouldn't take a hiking trip with anywhere else where you would immediately find that sense of commonality that you do along the Camino. I think that's probably one of the really big differences between the Camino and any other, either walking holiday or activity holiday, or indeed any other holiday.
Yes, very good. We have another question from Arcelia Margado. Hi, I love the Camino and want to organize it myself to work it shortly. I want to know what's the best location which you recommend I should start from.
Well, one can't answer that question without a little bit further, more information. How long do you have to travel? How long do you have to take for the journey? Are you looking for something that's sort of a quiet or reflective time? Or are you looking for more of a sort of a sense of community and busyness, which is, so which Camino do you do? Whether it's one of the quieter Caminos, the Camino in Vieno had 72 people starting from Monforte last year, whereas 82,000 started from Sarria. So I think one would need to know a little bit more information about what her intentions were for the trip before one could really make any sensible sort of a suggestion as to where she should start. I think she needs to ask herself, what sort of experience is she trying to create for herself? And then it would be easier to answer the question.
Yeah, I think Arcelia, to add to what John was saying, is maybe the Camino is a journey there, but it starts here. So ask yourself these questions: how long? What am I looking for? And then there will be a route or another that will be more specific to that. So the Camino starts now, and you have to ask your own questions. And the last question related to COVID-19. Is the Camino from Flor Ruiz, is the Camino safe to go now due to the COVID-19?
Well, now, if I could answer that question, I tell you, I would become a celebrity overnight, and everybody in the world would want to be knowing it. I mean, it's a changing situation. My advice to everyone, I'm sure it's the advice that you give to your clientele, is keep a track constantly on the web, on the news. It's changing day by day. At the moment, as of today, my understanding is that the whole Camino is sort of officially open. Anybody can go to Spain. You can go from Spain to Portugal. So there's no restrictions on traveling into and starting the country. There's restrictions while you're there, or requirements. For instance, if you're on public transport, you have to wear a mask. You have to observe the 2-meter ruling. So there are regulations, but right now, my understanding is that anybody, apart from the the US, I think US visitors, there's still a restriction on people coming from America and some certain countries, but certainly within Europe and including the UK, there might be some you need to check before you're going, depending where you're coming from. There are still, my understanding, but I can't imagine it will last for very much longer, that if you travel to Portugal, you might have to self-isolate when you come back from Portugal to the UK, if you're coming to the UK. So you need to sort of search out from your country or where you're coming from, what are the requirements, not only of going out of the country, but coming back in. So just, do the proper search. And if you're going through a company like yours, Umberto, that you ask the staff there what are the requirements. They will have some up-to-date information too. But the information is changing very fast, constantly. So you've just got to keep on top of it and do your research.
Indeed, it's officially open, but things are changing and so on. So information is really important. That's great, and that's all we have for today. So we hope. Thank you very much, John, for your time and your wealth of knowledge and experience. I hope that all of our viewers like the video. You can put a thumb up or subscribe if you want to know more. And to the next time. Thank you very much, John.
Pleasure. Great.